As a gold medal winning Olympic champion, two-time Women's World Cup winner, and Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient. Now she's talking to some of the pop culture's biggest influential success stories on her new podcast, Why Are You Like This? Please welcome Megan Rapinoe.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Megan Rapinoe. Why are you like this? Once again, on national TV or wherever people watch The View, she is comparing black women to men, inadvertently saying that we look like men, that we're masculine, we're not feminine. And she doesn't realize how racist she sounds. And she is being dragged all over the internet as we speak for her ignorance, for the fact that she decides to use black women to push an agenda of allowing men to compete in women's sports. So I'm going to react to her little segment on The View. She's continuing to spread lies. Now, I did a video addressing her article in Marie Claire, so check that one out. Basically, point by point, was just ridiculous point after ridiculous point, lie after lie. Essentially, fear-mongering after fear-mongering. And of course, her favourite, comparing black women to men. And all of this to justify men competing in women's sports. So she starts off with her usual deflection, talking about reproductive rights and, this sort of thing. According to her, rights that pertain to women. Is any one problem? She still doesn't know what a woman is.
Soccer, I loved playing soccer, and I loved the success, but ultimately there's got to be something more and bigger and better than that. And I feel like the equal pay was a huge legacy that now I can look at the way that women's sports is being treated now, whether it's WNBA or the PWHL or the NWSL. All of these leagues are like thriving and really kind of on this rocket ship, and I think a huge part of that had to do with the collective awakening that we're all having.
And yet she fails to understand that her pushing for men to compete in women's sports is taking money out of the pockets of women. Girls who have lost out to scholarships because of male athletes. Girls who weren't able to apply to the best colleges because they didn't have state champion to their name. All of that adds up. And then men literally taking prize money away from women because they were allowed to compete in the women's category and use their unfair advantage to achieve something that they couldn't achieve while competing with other men. She fails to recognize this. You can't have it both ways. Advocating for men to compete in women's categories goes directly against the rights of female athletes. The rights to fair and safe sports, the rights to prize money, records, achievement, accolades, that is rightfully theirs.
And a lot in part due to the equal pay.
Yeah, and that people love watching women's sports.
Yes.
That's a huge part of it.
Turns out.
Yeah, women's sports, not a bunch of cross-dressing men pretending to be women, taking accolades away from women, or males punching women in the face. Nobody wants to see that.
It's crazy, but right. They love it.
So for years, you've been an outspoken advocate for so many people, including the trans community. And there's been a lot of debate about trans women in sports. And you recently wrote an article basically saying that anti-trans legislation is not actually about protecting girls, but distracting from us from what really matters. Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, before she goes on to completely humiliate herself, how dare she say that it's not about protecting girls and women when we've had girls come forward and say that they were exposed to male genitalia in the locker room because those men were allowed to identify themselves into the women's and girls' locker rooms. How is wanting legislation in place that prevents girls and women from being abused not protecting women and girls? They never mention whether they're okay with men going into women's locker rooms. They never speak about that. I wonder why. Because there's no justification for it whatsoever. And no, women do not have penises.
Article. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, it wasn't.
I think what I mean by that is, let's just like pull back a little. At first it was like, well, nobody likes women's sports and nobody wants to watch it. Or there was, abuse happening and nobody seemed to care. Now all of a sudden we're going to use a vulnerable group of people in the trans community to be like, oh, well, we're just protecting women's sports and we care so much about it.
I'm so sick of it being shoved down people's throats that this is a group of vulnerable people. We're talking about men who are stronger, bigger, able to overpower women. We're talking about men who have male genitalia, going into the locker room, competing against women on the field, on the court, on the track, who can easily injure women much easier than the other way around, simply because of their size, their muscle mass, their bone density. So it's the women who are vulnerable. That's why we have a women's category for safety.
Frank Parisi, president of St. Pat's. A couple of years ago, one of the Flying Bats players broke one of our players' legs in a game, and it was in the lower division. So we're not talking about elite, so they were really tall, clumsy tackle. They got tackled from behind. Our player had their leg broken in 2 places. She's no longer playing football. Okay, and it was a direct result of a real bad, tall player in a real clumsy tackle. Didn't get a red card, didn't get a white card. Right. Accidents happen, I know, we spoke about that. But this could have been avoided because my 5'6" player, who didn't even weigh 60 kilos, against a 6'2" player who was maybe 90 kilos, in a real bad, clumsy tackle.
So no, it's the women who are vulnerable. Everybody knows this. Labels and identity doesn't alter reality. And if you're talking about men, being more vulnerable because they identify as a woman, then talk to the men about that. Do not involve the women.
When the Heritage Foundation is now going to go after Title IX. So is it about reproductive rights, or is it about just women's rights in general? We're seeing the rollback of Roe v. Wade. Marriage equality, I feel like, is getting put back on the table. That was settled law. And so all of these things, like, yes, they're going after trans people in sports, and they're using this as a wedge issue.
There you go with her deflection. And if you want to talk about so-called reproductive rights, you better be able to define what a woman is. Wouldn't surprise me if she goes down the same route as the women's minister in Australia, who said we should afford pregnancy rights to trans women, men.
But you said a biological man can't get pregnant.
That's correct, Senator. But someone who is a trans woman may be assumed to be pregnant or to be able to be pregnant.
But these are the people who talk about women's rights and they can't even define a woman.
And so all of these things, like, yes, they're going after trans people in sports, and they're using this as a wedge issue because we love sports and, we don't want our little girls to be unsafe in sports. And it's like, unsafe from who?
Unsafe from men. That's what we're talking about here. You can say trans women or whatever, but we're talking about men. We're talking about male athletes. These people have never been held accountable. Their ideology, the talking points that they make have never been challenged by the mainstream media, by the likes of The View. What she says is taken as fact. But what she's doing is telling lie after lie. She's allowed to just come out with these statements without providing any evidence. The Heritage Foundation wrote a piece about, or a report about Title IX and expanded it to include sports that may attract more girls than boys. And then the USA Today wrote an article in response, making all these ridiculous claims. An article written by the same person who accused Caitlin Clark of endangering black basketball players and even likened her to the woman who made accusations against Emmett Till. These people are crazy. The claims it makes about the Heritage Foundation that are just so exaggerated and so ridiculous. You can't trust these people to put forward a rational argument because they're anything but rational, logical, rooted in reality. They're none of those things. But here she goes. She's going to start comparing black women to men. Yes, that's right.
Okay. But now we're using this as like an overarching thing, when really what we're attacking women. We're saying, if you look like this as a woman, you can play. If you look like this as a woman, there's a bill in Washington happening right now that's going to require all girls, just like full stop, to go through a sex test, an invasive examining their genitals to see if they're a woman.
Yeah.
And that has not worked out well historically for people to do
we
that.
know what that means. Black girls are going to get questioned more, and they're going to get questioned first. Who's doing the
But
examination?
also, who wants to subject themselves to that?
And so they're going to see a pullback. They don't like women in sports because it helps us with confidence and power, and we see so many women in the C-suite played elite level sports.
Wow. So several lies there. A sex test is not a genital test. It is a simple cheek swab. You can try and lie all you want and conflate it to a genital test, but nobody's falling for that. We all know what a sex test is. A simple cheek swab. That is more than enough to determine whether the Y chromosome is present. And if every single female athlete or everybody who wants to compete in the women's category has to undergo that test, a cheek swab, how is that singling out anybody? It certainly isn't based on how anyone looks. Everybody has to do it. It's not singling out certain groups of people who have to take the test. It is all women, or everybody who purports to be a woman, who are required to take the test. If anything, that eliminates any subjective reasoning.
And that has not worked out well historically.
And one of them basically led Meghan into this. Not that she needs any leading into it. She has made these assertions numerous times, including in that article, that black women are going to be singled out, saying that she thinks black women look like men, that black women are more masculine looking. She doesn't even understand that she is spreading racist rhetoric. She's out here virtue signaling, claiming that she's standing up for black women and trans women, and implying that we're the same. So no, black women are not men. Black women do not look like men. I think the likes of Caster Semenya has a lot to do with it, because we were told that this is a woman with high testosterone. No such thing. Meaning, yes, testosterone levels with women vary, but only within the range that is possible for a female to produce. And it is very low compared to the range of men. It is impossible for a woman to have testosterone levels in the range of men. Because guess what? Women do not have the testes to produce the testosterone, unlike Caster Semenya, who said that his internal testes doesn't make him less of a woman. They are using these male athletes, males born with DSD, as a representation of black women.
Well, if they have the condition that Caster Semenya has, and we know about that because of Semenya taking it to the courts and everything was published, then they would be babies who were thought to be girls or who had ambiguous genitals when they were born, registered as girls, but would have gone through a full male puberty. And at that point, all would have become clear. And you're right, we don't know about these two. The reason we don't know is because they've insisted that no one's allowed to say. So when the International Boxing Association held a press conference to try and shed some light on this, they announced that they had been warned in writing by the National Olympic Committees of these boxers' countries not to reveal the test results that they had obtained. So I think we have to remember that this could be all cleared up. If this is a simple matter of confusion and these really are women, it would be very easy for them to resolve that.
Yeah, and they're a really easy tests. I mean, you don't even need a blood test or a major, science lab dedicated for months. You can just do a swab of the cheek, can't you?
Yeah, that's right. And there are people, particularly if they come from countries or rural areas in countries where they don't have good access to healthcare, there are babies who are erroneously registered as girls. And when they grow up, it all becomes clear.
They're not a representation of black women because they are male. Female athletes don't want to compete against men. And the likes of Meghan is intent on forcing women to do that. And she is ignoring the consequences, yet still purporting to be a women's rights advocate. Then on top of that, she's likening black women to men. Nobody's going to be singled out because everybody has to take the test. And the reason this is even necessary is because of the male athletes throughout the decades who have stolen accolades, medals, prize money, opportunities away from women, including black women. A woman didn't get to win the African Championships in the year that Caster Semenya won. A woman didn't get to qualify because of the male athletes in these African nations who took their spots. African women didn't get to qualify for those championships because spots were taken up by male athletes. This protects black women too. Black women do not want opportunities stolen from them either. I've done plenty of stories on this channel of black female athletes who have had opportunities stolen from them. Girls in high school, including black girls, who had their state championship stolen from them by a male athlete. This is an issue that affects women regardless of race because it's about sex, not race. Sex categories in sports is just that, sex categories. It's got nothing to do with race. It's not racial segregation. Women having to compete against men in the women's category is not equal opportunities for them.
There's a bill in Washington happening right now that's going to require all girls, just like full stop, to go through a sex test, an invasive, like examining their genitals to see if they're a woman.
There's not a single bill with any language saying that all girls are going to get their genitals examined to play sports. If there ever is gender verification, it's usually a spit test. And this is rich coming from a female professional soccer player who couldn't even beat a boys' varsity team.
You're not an advocate for female athletes because you're telling female athletes that they have to give up their fight for their own category. A category that was created so that they could actually participate in sports and enjoy all the benefits that you're talking about. And nobody's taking away those benefits from trans athletes. They just need to compete in the correct category.
Physically and all of it, but it's an attack on women in society. And I think the tie between the Heritage Foundation now wanting to go after Title IX, it's just like so blatant, like let's connect these dots. It's more than just a couple of trans kids in the entire country and a couple in each state being able to participate in some youth sports.
Yeah.
A couple here, a couple there, just ridiculous. Very disingenuous indeed to act like it's a one-on-one ratio, number one. We know that's not the case. That's like saying, well, you know, it's just a couple of athletes doping. If it's just one or two, then it's also just one or two being told no and getting their feelings hurt. Just one or two. So what does it matter? See, it works both ways. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video. And a huge thanks to all of those who have hyped my videos. It is greatly appreciated.